Today at Hotshot Repair, we're going to replace the broken screen on this iPhone 7 Plus and make it look like new again. Hi, my name's Kevin with Hotshot Repair in Columbia, Missouri, and today I'm going to be taking apart this iPhone 7 Plus that has a cracked screen. As we go through and test it, we're just making sure that the touchscreen works, that the home button and power button work, and making sure that it's just the screen at fault and we're just safe to replace the glass. We're going to start by removing the two Pentalobe screws from the bottom of the phone. You're going to need a special screwdriver for this. You can find one at iFixit.com. As we remove the screws, we're going to set them aside. Now we're going to pry up on the screen with a pry tool and just kind of work our way down the side of the screen to loosen the adhesive. Now we pry up on the top of the phone and the screen just flips over. We try to keep the screen at a 90-degree angle to avoid damage to the flex cables. Now we're going to use a tri-wing screwdriver to remove the screws from the LCD connector cover. This cover also covers the battery and the digitizer, as well as the home button cables. These screws are all different sizes, so you're going to want to set them aside and keep them organized so they go back in the original spots. We're just going to pry up on the battery, pry up on the LCD connector and the digitizer connector. Then we're going to work our way to the top of the phone and remove the three tri-wing screws that hold on the ear speaker flex cable cover. These are all different sizes as well, so you want to keep them organized. After we get the screws out of it, we can lift up on the cable, and the cover usually comes with it. Now we're going to set the frame aside, make sure all the dust is out of it. We're going to begin work on the screen. I like to start from the top of the screen, removing the 6 screws that hold on the ear speaker bracket. We're going to remove those and set them aside. Sorry, it was 5 screws. Now just set the ear speaker bracket aside. We're going to fold up the front camera and remove the ear speaker. Now I let the ear speaker flex cable just kind of hang out there until I come back to it with a hot air gun. Right now we're removing the 4 tri-wing screws from the home button bracket. These screws are all the same size, so it doesn't really matter what order you have them in, just keep them separated. After we get the screws out of it, we're going to remove the bracket and set it with the screws. And pry up on the home button flex cable connector with a pair of tweezers. Now we're going to get out the hot air gun and begin working on the parts that are glued to the frame. They use an adhesive that's heat sensitive, so you want to heat it up just enough to get it off of there, but not enough to damage the components. So I just kind of lift up on the cable and apply heat until it comes off. Now we're going to give it about 6 seconds worth of heat on the home button. We don't want to overheat the home button, itself or the chips inside the flex cable, so we're just giving it enough heat to loosen the adhesive, and then we're going to pry up on the home button flex cable. If this home button is damaged during disassembly, no home button will ever work again. The home button will not touch, the home button will not have Touch ID, the home button will basically be useless if the original button is damaged. Now we're installing the home button into the new frame. This screen comes with a backplate pre-installed. It saves us a little bit of time. We're just getting the home button lined up so that we can connect the flex cable to the bridge. I think on this one I ran into a little bit of problem with some broken glass or some dust that was keeping the home button from seating fully into the screen, so I'm just cleaning it off. before we try again. Once we get it in there, we're going to use a pair of tweezers to kind of get it lined up and get the connector seated fully. Now that the home button's in there, we're going to reinstall the bracket. This is basically the reverse of disassembly. You just put the bracket on there and then put the 4 screws back into it. These are tri-wing screws. Not many people have the screwdriver for these. In some cases they do come with a new screen, say on eBay or Amazon. These are iFixit screwdrivers and bits, so you can find them there. Now we're moving on to the ear speaker flex cable. You have to line up the proximity sensor first. Once you get it into its plastic holder, you can then start to line up all the other parts. This is difficult to explain. It's more of a technique, but I like to put the proximity sensor in first and then line up the ear speaker contacts with their posts, fold back the front camera, put in the ear speaker, you see what kind of trouble this is. Once everything's lined up, we're going to put the ear speaker back in, fold the front camera back over it, and then reinstall the bracket. Now the 5 screws that came out of it go back in the original spots. After that's done, we give it a little look over and make sure that everything looks okay before reinstalling the proximity sensor ear speaker flex cable. Then you rotate the screen kind of about 90 degrees and reinstall the LCD connector and the digitizer connector. And the battery. Turn the phone on. We're going to give it a little bit of a test before we install it fully. I don't run into much trouble with iPhone 7 and 7 Plus screens, so I'm usually pretty confident a screen is going to work. Right here I'm giving the home button just a little tap test. If I feel it vibrate, then I know that the home button is connected properly and working properly. In some screens early on, we would run into an issue with the home button not working properly because during manufacture they would bend that cable back and it would damage it, so the home button wouldn't work when you installed a screen. I don't see that problem much anymore. Now we're reinstalling the ear speaker cover bracket. We're just installing the 2 screws that came out of it. This is finicky to get lined up and get the screw in it at the same time. Once you have the first screw in, it gets a lot easier. Now we're reinstalling the LCD connector cover and putting the 4 screws that came out of it back into their original positions. You don't want to get these screws mixed up. With the iPhone 5s and 6s, you see a lot of long screw damage where people will put the long screw into the wrong hole and it will damage the logic board. So you want to make sure you get the screws back in where they came from. One thing I don't like about the iFixit bits is that screws don't tend to sit on there securely. They're a little bit easier to knock off to the side of a bit. So I might change the bits later with a Weehaw one. The iFixit ones are just a little bit too. It's just harder to get screws in there on the tip of the screwdriver. Now we're reinstalling the 2 Pentalobe screws that came out of the phone. Give the home button a test, give the screen a test, make sure everything's working properly. Now what we're doing is installing the free screen protector that I put on. These are just cheap screen protectors. They're made to buy you 1 or 2 shots. If your phone falls 1 or 2 times, these will probably save you, but they're not $15 to $30 screen protectors. I'm giving them away, so keep that in mind. I use a Scotch tape trick on them to get them lined up properly, and then fold the Scotch tape down around the frame after it's lined up. Peel it back off, remove the protective cover from the original screen, or I'm sorry, from the aftermarket screen. Give the glass a little bit of a cleaning. We're going to get rid of any dust that's on it, any fingerprints. Now we'll peel off the protective cover, fold the screen protector into place, and I kind of wipe down the side of it. We're just moving the air bubbles from the left to the right, getting them out of the screen protector. Give it a look over, make sure it looks like it's on straight. Make sure there's no bubbles in it. Peel off the tape. Give it another polish to get my fingerprints off of it. Then we're going to hand it back to the customer. That's all there is to this repair. If you have an iPhone that needs help, give me a call at 573-567-0527 or visit my website at www.hotshot.repair.